We have devastating news coming out of Miami at the Miami Seaquarium. Unfortunately, as of about a week ago, Friday, August 18th, Tokitae has passed away. Tokitae is the last of the orcas that were caught in the 1970s from Puget Sound that was in captivity. She was 57 years old, and she was to be returned back to the Puget Sound area, but unfortunately passed of some health conditions. We're going to talk about what this means from orcas and a conservation perspective, and how this has devastated the Lummi tribe, who have cultural ties to orcas as part of their tribe. It's their ancestors. And this is something that is devastating to them. We're going to play a clip, and we're going to talk more about Tokitae's death on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to a somber episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening in the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. I know it's a new week. I know it's just, you're going to work, or you're on your way to work and you're listening to this, or maybe you're on your way home from work and you don't want to hear bad news, but unfortunately we have to talk about Tokitae. Obviously, as I mentioned in the intro, she passed 2 Fridays ago on August 18th, and I was on vacation when it happened. I had a number of people reach out to me, a couple people actually, reach out to me, and they said, "Hey, Andrew, we want to know your thoughts on this." Initially, when I heard about it, I was devastated. This was such a sad situation from the beginning all the way to the end of her life. Tokitae was 57 years old. She was she was the last living orca that was taken from Puget Sound in the 1970s. And she was about to be released, in the next year or so back into Puget Sound, into a sea pen, potentially being able to reunite with her pod and her mother, who is still alive to this day. Whether that was going to happen or not, I don't know. I did an episode on this situation earlier in the summer, and I'll link to that in the show notes. But what I wanted to do right now is I wanted to play you a clip. It's from YouTube. It's from King 5 Seattle, which is a local news station in Seattle. And this news agency, or this news station, interviewed somebody from the Lummi tribe. And the Lummi tribe is a local tribe where the southern resident orca population they hang out around there. And there is definitely a cultural tie to the Lummi Nation. When people of the Lummi tribe pass on, they are thought to go as, to sort of embody an orca. Their soul embodies an orca, if I'm correct. And so this was a loss of one of their ancestors. And I have some thoughts on this, but right now I want to play you the full clip. It's about 2 minutes long. I want you to listen to the person who is being interviewed, and I want you to listen to the tone of her voice, the somber tone of her voice, with definitely an anger undertone from this whole situation. So here's that clip, and I'll talk. Listen to this, and we'll chat after.
2 hours north of Seattle, on the lands of the Lummi Nation, hearts are broken.
It's a very sad day today. We're grieving. We lost a relative.
Tonight, tribal elder Raynell Morris has learned that Tokitae, the now famous orca taken from Puget Sound in 1970, has died in captivity in Miami. Morris fought for years to bring her home, and recently won.
Well, 2 months ago, we got our veterinary report, green light, she's good to go home, good to travel. Everybody was on the same page, that this was the moment we've been waiting for, to get everybody to say yes, she's going home.
Plans were underway to transport the now 57-year-old orca from Florida to a sea pen in the waters along Orcas Island. It wasn't supposed to end like this.
After I heard the words and he reaffirmed it, it was just this deep hurt sadness, of anger, of loss.
Morris is now getting on a plane to Florida to be with the mammal she considers a tribal elder in her own right.
Yeah, the fight is definitely not over. We fully support, the nation fully supports bringing her home, and that has not changed. We have our culture and our way of life, the way that we do things, our own protocol, and we believe that she still needs to be here. She needs to come home to her family.
Toki, as she's called, was known to be the last living surviving orca, captured from Puget Sound and still in captivity. In her many decades away from the Northwest, protections for marine mammals have improved. Many performances using whales canceled altogether. All the time, her tribe hopeful for a day that will now never come.
Well, I bring her home. I go there and I bring her home.
In Bellingham,
That's my obligation,
Sebastian Robertson,
to finish the work for her, to bring her home.
King 5 News.
As you can see, Morris was very distraught by the whole situation. And I'm sure the entire Lummi Nation are angry, are sad, and they're mourning the death of a relative, as she mentioned. This was something that should never have happened in the first place. And, you go back to how tribes and indigenous people are treated, in the U.S. and in Canada and around the world. And you look at the cultural importance of the southern resident whale population to the Lummi tribe and the Lummi Nation, and you realize that their concerns were ignored. They should never have even taken an orca from the Puget Sound. It should never have happened in the first place. And I feel like it's really interesting because there's a similar story, not with orcas, but with aquaculture in British Columbia, Canada, off the waters of British Columbia, Canada, in between Vancouver Island and the mainland of British Columbia. There were a number of aquaculture pens that were installed in the territories of Indigenous people, a number of different nations within that area. They were never asked. It was just thought that it was okay to put them there. It fell under Indigenous territories. And for, decades, these aquaculture pens were actually added in. And it wasn't until recently, up until a few years ago, even actually in the last year, maybe two, where the government of Canada finally said the Indigenous people do not want these aquaculture pens in their territory. Therefore, they should be removed. And they are being removed. Licenses haven't been renewed, and eventually they will be renewed. Has that happened yet? I haven't kept full breadth of it, but if you ever want to watch or listen to a podcast called The Salmon People, it gives you a lot of the history of aquaculture in British Columbia, as well as the concerns of the Indigenous people in the area, and sort of the battle with the government and the province, the federal government and the province, to say, hey, we don't want these here, and this is why, and you should listen to us because this is our territory, and we don't want these aquaculture pens on there. The same situation should have happened for the Lummi Nation and orcas. They should never have been taken. But there seemed to have been this notion that having these orcas in marine theme parks was a good idea. It was something that would bring people to enjoy and understand the intelligence and grow a love for orcas, which they didn't have much love, and understand this animal a little bit more and say, hey, we should be protecting these animals. However, in the process, when they took 60 of the 150 or so orcas, they drastically reduced that orca population. They took the young. And so there's this missing generation of the southern resident orca population. And there's a documentary that was just released, and I'm gonna watch it soon. It was just released in August, and so it has a lot more information on that. But with the advent of lower sockeye salmon populations, as well as hydro dams and other types of dams that were installed and not removed, and sort of destroying that salmon population, they never had a chance to recover. They took too many. They took way too many. They took 60 too many, people can argue, but they took way too many. And now this population is on the endangered species list, right? And we're in the situation that we're in now with them, with about 72 or 73 individuals. A couple of, every year, a couple are born. Some survive, some don't. Most don't, unfortunately. We have to, the Lummi Nation watches as their ancestors are dying off. We've never really, as non-Indigenous people, I've never really thought of it from this perspective before. But it must be gut-wrenching for the Lummi Nation, and for people who have this strong belief and strong ties to the environment already, but also to an ancestral sort of belief that these orcas are part of their family. This should never have happened in the first place. And if you really want to sort of even think about getting close to what it would be like to think about that, if you look at Avatar 2, the movie, I know this is not really a comparison, but it kind of gives you a perspective. In the film, the premise of the story is there's water people on this planet, and they're an indigenous people, and they have their customs, they have their culture, and they have their belief system. And in that belief system, there are these whales, and they come by every year, and then the indigenous people swim with these whales, and it's like a reunification of family. It's like a family reunion, because the whales are believed to be their ancestors, the people who have moved on, their mothers, their sisters, their brothers. And there is the humans that come in. The story goes, the humans that come in are hunting these whales, because these alien whales, because they have a specific feature that could help with energy. And it's very similar to what happened to whales in the past in terms of their looking for energy from the oil and the fat of whales. But it's a little different in this respect, where the orcas for the Lummi Nation were being taken away from their waters, away from their family, and put into this aquarium to do tricks. And so other people, colonialists, right? Europeans, people who have been here, that have European descent and other descents, that are not part of the Lummi Nation, that are not indigenous to the land, and we're just there to learn from them, and it's a show. It's there to entertain us. We pay money when we went to watch. Right? We all did it. I did it as a kid. And you just don't get it until you hear Morse talking, and you're like, this is their family. These are their ancestors. It's gut-wrenching. And the fact that Toki came so close to being back in her waters, it's after 53 years being away. She was 4 years old when she was taken, in and around that time. And been 53 years since she'd seen those waters, and she was going to be put back in that area. Whether that would have been successful or not, we don't know. But we'll never know now, because she passed because of health reasons. Probably due to being confined in a concrete tank that is minimal compared to her potential of what she could travel in one day. Hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers. And she's stuck in this one little tank by herself. This is an animal that is highly intelligent, highly emotionally sensitive, and huge. 60 feet. And, just confined to this small tank. When people ask me how I feel, I've thought about this over the past week. I was by a cottage, I was by the water, and I was just, this is, all I can think of is, it's devastating. It gets me angry that we came so close to seeing where this orca is going to go, what her story is going to be in the future. There were so many hopes. It was scary at the same time, but, knowing that she wouldn't be confined to a small aquarium, to a small tank, and she could be in a sea pen where she can swim around and be back in her waters. It's infuriating. So close. And when it shouldn't even have happened in the first place. Right? There's a lesson here. Will we learn it? I don't know. As humans, I don't know. Orcas are still being taken worldwide. Dolphins are still being taken for captivity worldwide. Belugas are still being taken to captivity worldwide. And they shouldn't be. It's just, it's a non-issue anymore. It shouldn't happen. But we let greed and we let our curiosity, knowing what it does to whales and not caring and still doing what we want. And that's just got to stop. We can't let this happen. Yes, as in the clip said, there have been some great strides in protecting orcas from captivity. There's no more breeding program. There are no more shows, although some have been shown to do some shows. Some marine theme parks. There's no more breeding. There's no more captivity. In Canada, you cannot bring in an orca. You cannot bring in a marine mammal into an aquarium, into a marine theme park. You can't. You're not allowed. So we're seeing, the error of our ways. We've stopped it in the future, but there are still many orcas that are in captivity in the U.S. and in Canada that need to be released. And we need to put pressure. This is where the activists come in to put pressure. This is where scientists and activists work together to put pressure. And that's just the way it goes. We need to do more of that. It just needs to happen. So as people are asking me, how do I feel? That's how I feel. It's devastating. I want to get an interview with Doris or somebody from the Lummi Nation. However, I didn't want to be disrespectful and bother them in this time. I didn't even try to reach out just because I wanted them to have time to mourn. Maybe at a later date I'll reach out to see if they're up for doing an interview. We'll be having more orca content because there's some interesting and scary things that are happening in the Strait of Gibraltar for an orca population there that we've talked about before, and so that will be in an upcoming episode. But this is something that. It's just disappointing. It's sad. It really is. I hope wherever Tokitae is right now, she's happy and she's not confined and she's swimming in that big ocean up in the sky or wherever she might be, because she needs it. She deserves it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I really would. I think it would be something that we need to share as a community and something that we need to mourn. And as an ocean conservation community and in allyship with the Lummi Nation. So yeah, unfortunately we're at that. We need to focus more. The next steps, we need to focus more on getting captive orcas released, as well as protecting orca populations in the wild right now. All of the orca populations in the wild right now. So let me know what you think of this episode and your thoughts on Tokitae. You can DM me on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean, and I would love to hear your thoughts. If you want to share this with somebody who wants to know more about Tokitae, please do so. It's free to share. All you have to do is click the copy link on the episode and then just send them that link. And of course, you can always just go to the website, speakupforblue.com/podcast. You'll go right to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. It was a very important one today to listen to, even though it wasn't good news. It was very important to talk about it and get people's perspectives on it. I think it's something that we need to do more of in the future. But hopefully we can share some good news in the future as well with orcas. But that's it for today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.